Hey everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Turning Readers into Writers with me, your host, Emma Dhesi. Yay, so good to be here. And I'm quite excited to share the 5 C's of being a writer with you. I recently discovered an author and podcast host, Nancy Christie, and I was having a little look around her website, which I will link to in the show notes. And came across her 5 C's of being a writer. And I thought they encompassed really a lot of what you need to be a writer. In fact, all of the things that you need to be a writer, whether it be fiction or non-fiction, short stories, novels, you name it, you need all of these things. So I thought I would take a little bit of time to go through them and just give you a way of seeing the 5 C's as well and extrapolating on them somewhat. So the first of the 5 C's is confidence. Nancy writes, having faith in yourself, believing that this is a meaningful endeavour and that you have something important to say and that you have the ability to say it. I think this is vital. What a great way to start. Having confidence in yourself, definitely. Just even to put those first words down on the page, to start that chapter, to have the confidence to say, I'm willing to give this a try. I'm going to try something new and that it's meaningful, and genuinely believing that you've got something to say in the world and that your voice matters. Now, when I say your voice matters, it doesn't necessarily mean that this is something that you're going to go on an international stage and talk about. That, you know, your book might not be seen by everybody all around the world. You know, we're not all going to be the Stephen Kings or the Hilary Mantels of this world. But that for the people who do find your books, you've got something to say to them. You've got something that you want to share. You have experiences of life, no matter what age you are. You've got experiences, you've been through things, you've shared things with other people and shared adventures in your life that you can explore and that you can say something about. And you have the ability to say it. You absolutely do, because guaranteed most of you listening have attended workshops, have taken online courses, have practiced writing, have written short stories, have several unfinished manuscripts somewhere, but you have been practicing your writing and honing the skills that you've got. Now, I'm going to put it out there that storytelling is a craft that we continue to learn. We never stop learning. We never stop getting better. That's one of the wonderful things about it. But you'll have what you need to get yourself started. You have what you need to get going with that story and do your best to tell it where you are now. You know, you maybe in 5 years' time you could tell the same story better. But this is now. This is not 5 years' time. This is where you're at right now. And it's important that you have the confidence to know that you've got something to share and that you have the skills to share it. You have the ability to share it. And this comes back to something I talked to my students and clients with at the beginning is, you know, why are you the right person to tell the story that you're wanting to tell? Why is it important to you? Why is this the story that doesn't leave you alone at night? It keeps coming back to you. And it's because you've got something to say about life with the story that you want to tell. That's one of the reasons that this story keeps coming back to you, that it won't let you go. It's because at this moment in time, you've got something to say about the theme, about the imagery, about life with this particular story that you want to tell. So the first of the 5 C's, confidence, absolutely. The second of the 5 C's is courage. And Nancy says it's not being afraid to push your abilities to the fullest, not being afraid to explore new ideas or old fears, shedding light on all those dark corners, illuminating the truths or misconceptions that have hidden there. So courage, oh, absolutely. And this is about the writer themselves, not necessarily, the you out in the other, in the wider world who's been off having those adventures and experiencing life. I interpret this as the courage of the writer, of the creative, to come back and test all those things that you've been learning all those craft skills that you've been learning in class, to start putting them into action and integrating them into your writing. And she talks about shedding light on all those dark corners, illuminating the truths or misconceptions that have hidden there. And this I interpret as those truths or misconceptions that you've had about yourself as a writer. That you don't have the skills that it takes, that you don't have something to say, that people will judge you for the way that you write. People will be judging you badly. We never think that someone's going to read our work and judge it well and think, wow, hasn't that person done a great job? For some reason, our human nature always assumes that people are going to judge us badly and are going to make negative preconceptions about us. And that's not always true. But whilst we're living with that, whilst we're living with those ideas that people are going to judge us negatively, that can be really, really stifling, can't it? That can be the thing that stops you from having the courage to go out and write that book that you want to write, or pursue a dream that you have and you've always wanted to do. You know, if nobody else in your family is interested in reading, if there's not been books in your house as you've grown up, if your friends and family think that you're a bit crazy for wanting to do this, that can really amplify those existing doubts and fears that you've got about this pursuit that you have, this dream and desire that you have to write. It can really feed into the inner critic. It can really feed into the inner critic that we all have in us. You know, we all have that little voice in our head that says, you can't do this. Who do you think you are? You're too young. You're too old. You're too fat. You're too thin. You don't know how to spell, that feed into that memory of your teacher, Mrs. Jenkins, when she said that your writing was awful and you should never ever do it again. Who tells you your grammar's not good enough, you don't have a big enough vocabulary. All of those inner critic voices, all of those nasty things that we say to each other, to ourselves, all of those horrible things that we say to ourselves are kind of come to the forefront when we think about taking that courageous step and putting ourselves a little bit above the parapet and telling friends and family and showing them what we've been doing in our creative life. That takes courage. It takes courage to do that. And so I think this is a really important one of Nancy's 5 C's. The third of the 5 C's that Nancy Christie talks about is curiosity. And this is, I think this is often what starts a lot of people off, is that what if question about the world. So she writes, viewing the world and its inhabitants with the openness of a child. That's what curiosity is. It's asking yourself, what if? It's playing, let's pretend, instead of assuming that you already know the outcome. Curiosity is such a fun part of the process. I remember reading a blog post, I think it was by Roz Morris, about curiosity really being at the heart of any good story, and it's that's what piques our interest. That's what gets us fascinated with telling a story and what could happen in it and what might be a way through for the story. Who is the character? What could happen to them? What has happened to them that's led them up to this moment in time where you're about to start telling their story in your novel. And that's where it all begins. Roz Morris is a literary novelist, so very, very character driven, but it equally applies to sort of more genre fiction too. If we think about Stephen King, I quite often come back to him simply because he's so successful and he's clearly got something that is working. It's probably for him more instinctual than maybe learned. He's one of those kind of he's the unicorn that we all wish we were. But he often talks about how he starts with a what if, and because he writes horror and he's trying to pull two strange things together, He said in his book and in interviews I've read with him, he is looking for things that seem juxtaposed, that seem odd, and thinking about, well, what if I put A with B? What would that look like, and how would that progress things? And this idea of sort of getting into our childlike self and allowing ourselves to feel playful again, and rather than everything necessarily being logical and well planned out and ordered, as we often want things to be in our day-to-day life in the outside world, but within our fiction, within our storytelling, we can get rid of those boundaries. In that way, we can start thinking, well, what if I took A and D and put them together? What would happen then? Imagine something happened to this person. What could that mean for them? How would that evolve? So it's giving yourself permission to be, sometimes you might consider it a bit silly, particularly if you're someone who's writing for a younger audience where you can be more fantastical. Or if you are writing sci-fi, fantasy, where things haven't happened yet, and you're giving yourself that permission to imagine, what if there was a machine that could do this? What if we could fly from one galaxy to the next in 10 seconds, or be transported in some way? Even allowing yourself to create new languages for your characters in your books. Equally, if you're writing historical, well, what would it have been like, pretending that you are a war bride. I'm reading a book about when men came back from the Second World War, what that was like for the wives and mothers who had been left behind, having these strangers essentially come back into day-to-day life from a POW camp. Well, what would that be like? And giving yourself the permission to pretend that you are the wife of someone who's been in a POW camp for 6 years. What would that be like if they came back? How would your marriage be different? How would your relationship be different? Would you still want it? What have you been doing if you're the wife at home? What have you been doing for those 6 years while your partner or husband has been away? What might have happened in those years? What was it like to be on rations and having to make do and mend? All of those things. It's just putting yourself into that position, and as Nancy says, imagining rather than assuming you already know the outcome. So if you can put yourself in a position and see where it takes you, that can be really, really interesting, and it can take you in new places. I'm thinking of an exercise that one of my mentors would give us. We'd be thinking about an ending for the story. So how do you want your story to end? And then we would come up with 5-10 possible ways that the story could end. And then he'd say, okay, come up with another 5. And then by then you're kind of like, oh my goodness, well, I'm running out of ideas as to how the story might end. And sometimes it can be quite painful. But if you keep going, if you keep pushing through, which takes us back to the courage, the second of the 5 C's, the courage of not being afraid to push your abilities to their fullest, but keep thinking, what could this ending be like? What could this ending be like? And that, just when you think you can't think of anything interesting, that's when you get your best idea. But by staying curious and staying open to what might happen instead of thinking you already know, that can lead to some fun places. That's where curiosity gets you. It gets you to some fun places. All right, so that was 3 of the 5. So we have confidence, courage, curiosity. The 4th C is creativity. And Nancy writes, this is wanting to bring a new thought to light, an unborn character to life. I particularly like the mention of this unborn character, bringing an unborn character to life, because when you think about it, that is what we are doing as novelists, as storytellers. We are creating an individual out of thin air. We're completely making a person up, from everything from what they look like, what their face looks like, to how they dress, to their particular personality quirks, and the jobs that they hold, and the family that they have, and the friends that they interact with. All of these things, we're completely making them up. Now, it might be that your characters or an amalgamation of people that you know, but equally they could be somebody that you do not know at all, and have just kind of come out of the back of your brain, from that subconscious area of your brain. And allowing yourself to do that, giving yourself the creativity to fall into that and allow that to see where that goes. That's a fantastic part of being a writer, is allowing this this part of your brain that often is not encouraged in day-to-day life. I mean, unless, I'd say, even if you work in something like advertising, there is still a constraint on your creativity because you're working towards the brief of somebody else. Now, boundaries are great, but when you are creating your own characters and your own thoughts, you're bringing your own thoughts to light, there's a freedom that comes with that. And that's when you can really step into your creativity and go too far. Go too far with that creativity if you have to. And then you get to pull back and you get to kind of be more discerning about what will work in a story and what won't. But don't hold yourself back from that. Allow yourself to go as creative, as shocking as you want to, as imaginative as you want to be in that moment, and then you can put on your rational head later and come back and then work back within those boundaries of storytelling. But what a wonderful way to kind of bring yourself into the moment of the character that you're writing about, or a scene that you're writing, or a conversation that is coming to light for your story. But stepping into your creativity is the 4th C of being a writer. And then the 5th and final of the 5 C's of being a writer is commitment. And Nancy writes, making writing an important part of your life, regardless of its income producing potential. It isn't being published that makes you a writer. You are a writer as long as you write. Commitment. That's a scary word for many people, including myself, because it suggests that it is something that you need to do every day. It suggests that this is something that you're going to be doing for forever. And there's a feeling, quite often I think for people, there's a feeling of it being never ending. And that can feel a bit intimidating, I think. But commitment is necessary. There's no two ways about it. That is definitely a part of being a writer. And in many ways, it can be the hardest part of being a writer. And there are many tricks that we can use on ourselves to get us around that. But I do think that this is not something to be afraid of. So when you make writing an important part of your life, when you integrate it into your life, it becomes easier and easier. So if we think about something as simple as, brushing your teeth, that's something that you do twice a day, and you do it every day, and you don't give it too much thought because you've integrated it into your life. It has become very, very easy. If you remember, you maybe don't remember, but if you've got children or you've seen children brushing their teeth when they're very little, it's pretty tough going. How much toothpaste do you use? It's a strange flavour. How do you actually brush your teeth? How do you know when they're properly brushed? All of these little things need to be thought about for a child who's learning to brush their teeth. But as an adult, we don't give it a second thought. We just do it. We know instinctively, intuitively, how much toothpaste you need on your toothbrush, how long you brush your teeth for, and we don't think about it. It doesn't take up any brain space. And this is what, when you make writing a part of your life, when you integrate it into your life, writing becomes like that. And so making the commitment to your story becomes easier. The more that you're able to come to your writing, the more you're able to reduce that wall of resistance that pops up. The less scary it becomes, the less intimidating your writing is, because you're doing it regularly. It's a part of your life. It becomes, it's in your bones. It becomes in your bones. And because you're so familiar with the story, because you're so involved in it, you're working on it regularly, it doesn't hold the same fear factor that writing holds when you only come to it once a month or every 2 weeks, and you've forgotten. By that time, you've forgotten what it was you wrote last time. So it feels like this uphill battle. But when you make writing an important part of your life, you lessen that, you reduce that wall of resistance, it gets easier to come to the writing, you start to enjoy it more, and then you want to write more often because you're enjoying it. It gives you what you need. You're a creative, so you need to have that creativity in your life. It is like medicine for you. It helps calm your brain, it helps to soothe you, helps to de-stress you. Make it a part of your life, and it will become less difficult as you go along. The more you integrate it to your life, the easier it becomes. And as Nancy says, regardless of its income producing potential, you're doing this for you more than you're doing it for anybody else. Particularly in the beginning, you're doing this for you as a way of keeping you sane. At least that's what it does for me. It's one of the ways that I keep sane. It is a form of meditation for me. So I need to do writing every day. Not always creative writing. Sometimes it's writing a blog post, or sometimes it's writing an article. But there's always some kind of writing involved, and that helps me stay on the level, stay balanced. So commitment is a big part of it, and I talk about this a lot, about writing regularly, and how being regular with your writing is the easiest way to stop it being so scary and stop it being so intimidating. So there we go. There are Nancy Christie's 5 C's of being a writer: confidence, courage, curiosity, creativity, and commitment. So which of those 5 do you recognize as being the easiest one for you? Do you feel confident that you do have something to say about the world in which you live, and that you have the ability to say it? Are you courageous? Do you feel that it doesn't matter what others in your life are saying about your need and want to write? You're happy to go with it. You're happy to face your fears. You're happy to find a way to work with your inner critic, or not. Is curiosity something that comes easily to you? Do you find that you do still have that kind of childlike curiosity about the world in which you live, about the people that you meet, and life stories, and what's going on in this world, whether it be good or bad? Are you curious about it? And do you often wonder, hey, what if I put this and this together? Or let's imagine. And what about your creativity? Do you enjoy creating something out of nothing? Do you enjoy sitting down and building a scene out of your imagination, out of thin air, or creating a character out of thin air, and taking that time to really delve into it and spend time there with your creativity? And do you find the commitment easy? Maybe actually you are someone who loves routine, who loves regularity, and that makes you feel safe and comfortable. And yeah, you can write just about every day. That is something that comes easily to you. Or what about the other side of that? Which one of these 5 C's do you find the hardest? Which is the one that you know you've kind of got to work on the most, and incorporate into your writing life? Is it confidence, courage, curiosity, creativity, or commitment? So do let me know. You can drop me a line at Emma Dhesi and let me know which one of these works for you the best, or is the one that you're struggling with most. Or, of course, leave a comment below. I would love to hear. Well, that's me for this week. Stay tuned, and I will see you next time.